Hello and welcome to the Pocket MBA, your essential shortcut to being truly well-informed, packed with insights that cut through the noise and hopefully a few surprising facts along the way. I'm your guide for today's session.
And I'm absolutely delighted to be here, ready to unpack some, well, truly profound ideas that challenge our very understanding of what good management really means. Today, we're delving into a concept that has quite literally reshaped how businesses think about innovation, growth, and indeed, how they confront the specter of failure.
That's right. We're focusing on the innovator's dilemma, a term brilliantly coined by Clayton M. Christensen, and we're going deep into the incredibly rich source material from his seminal work. Our mission today is to extract the most vital nuggets of knowledge from this text, helping you, our astute listener, grasp why even the most impeccably run companies, those seemingly doing everything right, can inexplicably stumble and lose their market leadership when faced with certain very specific types of change.
Indeed. It's a paradox that has caught countless business leaders off guard. The very decisions and practices that propel a company to, well, staggering success can, under specific, often unforeseen circumstances, inadvertently sow the seeds of its ultimate downfall.
Right.
We're going to explore this through some truly compelling, almost dramatic examples across diverse industries, from the rapid-fire world of disk drives, which, as you'll see, offers a kind of sped-up history lesson, to the seemingly slow-moving mechanical excavators and even the foundational steel industry. This journey raises an important, even unsettling question. What if much of what we instinctively accept as good management, as universal best practice, is, in fact, only situationally appropriate? What if applying it universally is the very trap?
That's a profoundly unsettling thought for any business leader, isn't it?
Yeah.
If our best practices can lead us astray, then what fundamental shift in mindset is truly required to even begin navigating these blind spots? So, get ready for some genuine aha moments that might just change how you view your own organization, your customers, and your future strategy. This isn't just theory, it's a roadmap to enduring relevance. Let's unpack this.
Our central puzzle for today, for any manager striving for enduring success in a dynamic world, is this. Why do great companies, those managed by seemingly astute leaders, often fail to stay atop their industries? It's a question that, on the surface, seems almost absurd, perhaps even counterintuitive.
Right, it feels like they should stay on top.
Exactly. We are, after all, steeped in the belief that strong leadership, a clear strategic vision, and sound management practices are the very cornerstones of competitive advantage and sustained profitability. Yet, a dispassionate look at business history provides numerous sobering examples to the contrary, hinting at a deeper, more systemic issue.
And a prime example of this core paradox, is meticulously detailed in our sources, is the truly astonishing story of Sears Roebuck. I mean, for decades, Sears wasn't just respected. It was revered as one of the most astutely managed retailers in the entire world.
Quite a titan.
At its zenith, Sears commanded an astounding influence, accounting for more than 2% of all retail sales in the United States. Just think about that sheer scale, that market penetration that reach across the vast American landscape.
Incredible reach.
They weren't just big, they were profoundly innovative. Sears pioneered critical innovations that are now fundamental to modern retail. We're talking about sophisticated supply chain management that ensured goods reached every corner of the country, the development of store brands that became household names and offered incredible value.
Kenmore, Craftsman.
Exactly. Catalog retailing that literally connected remote customers to a world of goods. And even the widespread use of consumer credit cards, they were light years ahead of their time in many respects.
They really were.
Fortune magazine, in a glowing 1964 excerpt, captured their essence, describing Sears as a company where everybody in its organization simply did the right thing easily and naturally. And their cumulative effect was to create an extraordinary powerhouse of a company. They were, by all conventional measures, seen as the very epitome of good management.
Indeed. Yet, as you rightly point out, the narrative for Sears shifts dramatically, becoming a poignant cautionary tale for modern managers. How could this lauded innovator, this paragon of retail efficiency, somehow completely miss the advent of discount retailing and the meteoric rise of home centers like Home Depot and Lowe's?
It's baffling.
And in today's booming digital and direct-to-consumer market, Sears has been largely driven from the very catalog business it helped to invent. And that enormous lead it had so painstakingly established in consumer credit cards. It was ultimately usurped by new, agile entrants like Visa and
They
MasterCard.
just couldn't keep up.
What's truly striking, and what underpins the core of the innovator's dilemma, is that Sears received its most effusive accolades and was widely praised as one of the best managed companies in the world at the very time, specifically in the mid-1960s, when it was, ironically, ignoring the very nascent disruptive forces that would ultimately strip it of its core franchise. It's quite the paradox, isn't it?
It really is.
Good management, as conventionally understood and celebrated, seemed to lead directly to a profound and ultimately fatal strategic blindness.
It certainly is an astonishing irony. It almost feels unfair. Are you suggesting that doing everything right can actually be the undoing of a successful company? It's quite a confronting thought for any manager trying to build a resilient business. So if they were so well managed, if everyone was doing the right thing, what's the alternative explanation for their downfall? What went wrong?
Confronting indeed. And that's precisely the dilemma Christensen's work uncovers. It's not about incompetence or sudden lack of effort or even simply bad luck. Our research, drawing directly from his meticulous work, supports a rather unsettling view. These failed firms were, in fact, as well run as one could reasonably expect any firm managed by mortals to be.
Okay.
The issue wasn't the quality of the people. Instead, there is something inherent in the way decisions get made in successful, well-established organizations that, under specific, often subtle circumstances, inadvertently sows the seeds of eventual failure. It's a systemic, not an individual problem.
Precisely. They followed what we generally consider to be exemplary management practices. They listened intently and responsively to their most profitable, most important customers, tailoring their offerings to meet known needs.
You know, the ones who paid the bills?
Right. They invested aggressively in new technologies that promised to provide those customers with more and better products of the sort they already wanted. They carefully studied market trends, employing sophisticated analytics to anticipate demand, and they systematically allocated investment capital to innovations that promised the best returns and the most substantial growth within their existing business models.
All perfectly rational decisions.
Totally rational. But the profound and deeply counterintuitive finding is that it was because of these very good management practices that they ultimately lost their positions of leadership. They were, in a sense, victims of their own success and their own well-honed, rational processes. So what does this all mean for us as managers and business leaders today? This is the core implication, and it's a critical one for applying these insights. It means that many of what are now widely accepted principles of good management principles, like always keeping close to your existing customers, always investing in higher margin products, or always prioritizing substantial markets.
The MBA playbook, essentially.
Kind of. These are, in fact, only situationally appropriate. They are powerful tools, but only in the right context. There are specific times and contexts when alternative principles are not just advisable, but absolutely critical for long-term survival and enduring success. Ignoring this crucial distinction, this understanding of context, can prove to be a fatal mistake for even the most lauded companies.
To truly understand this paradox and to discern precisely when those alternative principles might apply, we must differentiate between two fundamental types of technological change or innovation as meticulously outlined in our source material. The first type we call sustaining technologies.
So a sustaining technology is essentially making a good thing even better.
Right.
Right? Like a new iPhone with a crisper camera or a car with better fuel efficiency. It's about optimizing along known dimensions of value for existing customers.
Exactly. You've hit the nail on the head. Sustaining technologies are defined as innovations that improve the performance of established products along the dimensions that mainstream customers have historically valued. They are the expected advancements, the next logical step in product evolution.
Okay.
Now, to get a bit more formal, in the disk drive industry, a field renowned for its rapid technological shifts, a classic example is the progression of recording density. Early drives relied on ferrite heads, then came the development of thin film heads, and later, even more advanced magnetoresistive heads.
Right, getting more data onto the disk.
Precisely. Each of these represented a discontinuous leap in component technology, dramatically improving the amount of data that could be stored per square inch, a key performance metric for mainstream computer manufacturers. Similarly, in the mechanical excavator industry, sustaining innovations led to the development of bigger and faster cable excavators, capable of moving greater volumes of earth in less time, directly addressing what their existing large-scale construction customers valued most.
More power, more speed.
Quite. Established incumbent firms consistently excel at and lead in developing and commercializing these types of sustaining technologies. They pour resources into them, they conduct expensive R&D, and they engage in incremental improvements, often with aggressive investment. This happens because their established, profitable customers demand it, and it almost invariably leads to higher profits and sustained leadership within their existing value networks. It's what they're built to do.
Now, in stark contrast to that steady march of improvement, we have disruptive technologies. These are innovations that, when they first emerge, typically offer lower performance on the dimensions that mainstream customers in established markets value. But, and this is the absolutely crucial part, the twist in the tail, they introduce a new package of attributes that appeals to different, often new, emerging, or less demanding markets.
Yes, that's the key.
These new attributes might include being simpler, cheaper, smaller, more convenient, or perhaps more reliable in a new use context. It's not about doing the old thing better, but doing a new thing differently.
Quite right. The impact of disruptive technologies is not merely to improve an existing product. It is to fundamentally change the value proposition in a market, or even to open entirely new markets that previously didn't exist or were economically unfeasible.
Ah, okay.
Consider the architectural innovations that repeatedly shrunk the physical size of disk drives, moving from large 14-inch diameter disks down to 8-inch, then 5.25-inch, and ultimately 3.5-inch and 1.8-inch formats. Each smaller drive initially offered less storage capacity and often a higher cost per megabyte compared to its larger predecessors.
So worse on the old metrics.
Exactly. Mainstream mainframe users who needed hundreds of megabytes of storage simply weren't interested in these smaller, seemingly inferior products. However, these smaller drives were physically much smaller and lighter, making them ideal for new applications like mini computers, desktop personal computers, and eventually portable laptops, where size, ruggedness, and cost per unit were valued more than raw capacity per megabyte.
So different things mattered to those new customers.
Precisely. The attributes they did offer were disruptive to the existing hierarchy of value. Smallness, for instance, had little value to mainframe users, but it was paramount for mini-computer integration.
The same pattern recurs across different sectors, making it so compelling for us. Hydraulic excavators, for instance, were initially much smaller and less powerful than the established cable machines, but they offered unprecedented precision digging for narrow trenches, a task previously done by laborious hand shoveling.
A whole new capability.
Right. This new capability appealed to small residential contractors who had been completely ignored by the large cable excavator manufacturers. Minimill steel, when it first emerged, produced lower quality steel, but it was far cheaper to produce, and found its niche in rebar, a low-end, high-volume market.
The bottom of the market.
Discount retailing offered lower prices and a no-frills convenience model, fundamentally upending traditional department stores that focused on service and selection. And inkjet printers, initially slower with poorer resolution than laser jets, found a huge market because they were dramatically cheaper, smaller, and easier to use at home.
Exactly. In virtually every instance, established firms struggle profoundly with these disruptive technologies, often ignoring them or dismissing them as niche products with limited potential until it is far too late to respond effectively. Their existing business model simply can't accommodate the new value proposition. It doesn't compute, so to speak.
It really doesn't fit their spreadsheets.
It doesn't. And here's where it gets really interesting, especially for those of us trying to predict market shifts and understand organizational behavior. Our sources extensively utilize the disk drive industry as an ideal field of study, referring to it as a fruit fly for business study.
A fruit fly? Okay, explain that.
The analogy is incredibly apt. Just as fruit flies have rapid reproductive cycles that allow geneticists to observe evolutionary changes over many generations quickly, the disk drive industry offers a fast history. In just a few short years, market segments, companies, and technologies have emerged, matured, and declined, playing out complex business dramas with astonishing speed. This accelerated timeline allows for remarkably clear observation of patterns.
Ah, I see. So you can watch entire cycles play out really quickly. This rapid pace and the wealth of detailed available data provide an unusually rich, almost laboratory-like environment to analyze patterns of success and failure with remarkable completeness and accuracy.
Exactly.
What's truly fascinating, and a core insight that should stick with you, is the repetitive pattern observed over time. In only 2 out of the 6 times that a new architectural technology emerged, meaning a fundamental change in the product's design and form factor, not just incremental component improvements, did the industry's dominant firm manage to maintain its leadership position in the subsequent generation.
Only 2 out of 6.
That's a staggering failure rate for market leaders. It's like they keep missing the boat.
They do. Let's delve deeper into this pattern, as it truly is foundational to understanding the dilemma. Consider the mainframe computer users in the late 1970s. They primarily needed 300 to 400 megabytes of storage capacity, typically provided by large 14-inch disk drives. Their systems were designed around these physical dimensions and performance capabilities.
Big iron needs big storage.
Precisely. When the disruptive 8-inch drives emerged, offering a modest 10 to 40 megabytes, they were simply of no interest to these mainstream mainframe manufacturers. Their existing most profitable customers saw no immediate value in these smaller, lower-capacity products. In fact, they saw them as inferior.
Not enough space? Too slow, maybe.
Exactly. So these 8-inch drives had to find a new application, a new market where their different attributes were valued, and they did. Mini computers. Companies like Wang, DC, Data General, and Hewlett-Packard didn't manufacture mainframes, and their customers had different needs, a different value network. They couldn't use the physically large 14-inch drives in their smaller desk-side mini-computers.
So size mattered there.
Critically, while initially the cost per megabyte of 8-inch drives was higher, these new customers were willing to pay a premium for other attributes that were important to them, especially smaller size, ruggedness, and lower power consumption. Smallness had little value to mainframe users, but it was paramount for mini-computer integration. The cost per megabyte wasn't the primary driver for this new segment.
And the cycle repeated itself with almost uncanny predictability. The same dynamic played out with the emergence of 5.25-inch drives, which found their initial home in the burgeoning desktop PC market, where space was at a premium and a lower unit cost was critical for mass adoption.
Right, for the IBM PC and its clones.
Then again with the 3.5-inch drives, which were perfectly suited for new applications like portable and laptop computers, offering greater ruggedness and even lower power consumption, even with initially lower capacity. Each time, the leading firms in the older, larger architecture struggled mightily to adapt to the new, smaller, disruptive technology, often being toppled by new entrants who had no legacy customers or cost structures to defend. It's like watching evolution in fast forward.
It really is. This consistent, predictable pattern, repeated across multiple generations of technology and market segments within the disk drive industry, is incredibly crucial for our MBA listeners. Understanding these underlying forces allows us to recognize similar predictable dynamics at play in any industry you might encounter, regardless of its specific pace or technological intensity.
So the lessons from disk drives apply to, say, healthcare or energy.
Absolutely. The specific products or technologies may change, but the fundamental principles of how established, successful organizations react to disruptive innovation and why they often falter remain remarkably consistent. It's a universal business truth that this rapid-fire industry reveals with exceptional clarity.
Right, so why does this happen? Companies do not operate in a vacuum, you see. They are, in essence, deeply embedded in intricate and often invisible structures we call value networks. To truly grasp why even the most successful firms can falter, we must understand how these networks fundamentally shape their perceptions, their decisions, and their very definition of what constitutes a good opportunity.
Okay, value networks. What are those exactly?
A value network is, at its core, a nested commercial system, where products are often components within larger systems, which themselves are often components within even larger overarching systems of use. For instance, a disk drive is a component within a computer.
That computer is a component within a broader information system for a business, and that information system serves the end-user needs of a large organization. Each layer has its own set of demands and expectations.
Got it. Like layers of an onion, sort of.
In a way, yes. And what's profoundly important about these value networks is that each one has its own unique way of measuring value. There's a distinct, almost unspoken rank ordering of important product attributes that dictates what customers in that network care about most.
So different customers value different things.
Precisely. Consider the example of disk drives again. For the mainstream mainframe computer value network, disk drive performance was primarily measured by metrics like raw capacity, speed of data transfer, and absolute reliability. These were the paramount concerns for that incredibly demanding customer base.
Need the speed, need the space.
Absolutely. However, if we look at the emerging portable computing value network, the crucial attributes were entirely different. Ruggedness to withstand travel, low power consumption to extend battery life, and critically small physical size to fit into compact devices.
Totally different priorities.
Completely. This means that parallel value networks can and often do exist within the same broadly defined industry, and each one defines what makes a product valuable in a fundamentally different way. The profound implication here is that your existing, most profitable customers in one value network might not only fail to appreciate, but might actively dismiss the improvements offered by a disruptive technology originating in another network.
Wow. So what you think is an improvement, they might see as irrelevant or even bad.
Exactly. It's not just a different preference, it's a different universe of value. What looks like a clear improvement to your established customers can be completely irrelevant or even a step backward for emerging markets.
Okay, that makes sense.
And intimately linked to these unique value networks are their characteristic cost structures.
Ugh.
Competing within the mainframe computer network, for example, entails substantial research, engineering, and development costs for sophisticated custom solutions, coupled with high manufacturing overheads due to relatively low unit volumes and often customized product configurations.
Lots of R&D, high fixed costs.
Correct. Selling directly to end users of such complex systems also involves significant sales force costs. And maintaining an extensive field service network to support these intricate machines represents a substantial ongoing expense. All these costs must be incurred to provide the types of premium products and services customers in this value network require.
Right.
For these reasons, makers of mainframe computers and the manufacturers of the high-capacity 14-inch disk drives sold to them historically needed gross profit margins of between 50 and 60% to cover the inherent overhead cost structure of their value network. Anything less would signal failure.
50 to 60% margins. Wow. Now compare that to the portable computer value network, where a vastly different cost structure prevails. These computer makers incur little expense researching fundamental component technologies, preferring instead to build their machines with proven, standardized component technologies procured from external vendors.
More assembly than invention, in a sense.
Right. Manufacturing involves assembling millions of standard products, often in low labor cost regions, optimizing purely for volume and efficiency. Most sales are made through national retail chains or by mail order, significantly reducing direct sales force costs. As a result, companies in this value network can be profitable with gross margins of just 15 to 20%.
A huge difference. 15 to 20 versus 50 to 60.
So what does this stark difference in cost structures mean for how established firms prioritize potential innovations? This seems like a critical piece of the puzzle.
It creates a powerful and often subconscious bias, you see. Innovations that are highly valued within a firm's current value network, or those that promise access to new networks where characteristic gross margins are higher than their own, will naturally be perceived as profitable, strategically important, and will attract substantial resources, top talent, and executive attention.
The stuff that fits the model gets the money.
Precisely. These are the projects that get funded. Conversely, disruptive technologies, which almost invariably begin in nascent, poorly defined, lower-margin networks, will not be viewed as profitable through the lens of the established firm. From the perspective of an established firm's ingrained cost structure, its existing business model, and the expectations of its investors, these opportunities simply don't make logical financial sense.
They look unattractive. Small, low margin.
Exactly. They struggle desperately to attract investment, often losing out in internal resource allocation battles to more immediately lucrative projects.
It's a classic internal dilemma, isn't it? Why would a company built and optimized to make, say, 60% gross margins enthusiastically invest in something that at best only makes 15% or 20%?
Yeah.
From within their established value network, and given their ingrained cost structure and the values shaped by that structure, it simply doesn't make logical sense.
It doesn't.
This internal logic, though perfectly rational for the existing business, becomes a powerful, almost invisible barrier to embracing disruption. It's like asking a company built to run marathons to suddenly become a sprinter. They have the legs, but their whole system is optimized for a different race.
Precisely. That's an excellent analogy. And this powerful internal logic gives rise to what our research terms the northeastern pull on trajectory maps. These are analytical graphs that plot product performance against time or cost.
Northeastern pull, like on a map.
Yes, think of performance on the vertical axis and time or cost on the horizontal. There's a strong, almost irresistible upward mobility for companies operating within a value network. They find it relatively easy, and certainly rational, to migrate upmarket toward higher performance products that serve more demanding customers, operate in larger markets, and crucially, offer higher gross margins.
Okay, up and to the right, more performance, higher margins?
Exactly. This trajectory is consistently seen as a clear, straightforward, and highly profitable path to improving financial performance, meeting investor expectations, and rewarding management. It feels like natural evolution.
But the flip side of this is the severe and often fatal downward immobility. It is extremely difficult, if not impossible, for established firms to deliberately move down market into small, poorly defined, lower margin markets where disruptive technologies typically take root. This is the crucial point for managers to grasp. Why is this so difficult for otherwise well-managed companies? What mechanisms are at play?
Well, for one, their internal resource allocation processes are naturally designed to direct funds and talent to proposals that promise higher margins and larger, more assured markets. These are the projects that get the green light.
The safe bets.
The perceived safe bets, yes. Proposals for small, low-margin disruptive technologies simply lose out in this internal competition for capital and attention. They are starved of the oxygen they need to grow.
And I imagine there's a significant human element to this, particularly concerning career paths.
Absolutely. Furthermore, consider the profound impact on middle managers' careers. Their success and opportunities for advancement within the corporate hierarchy are often intrinsically linked to their ability to successfully sponsor projects that deliver significant, measurable results in large, established markets.
You get promoted for hitting big targets.
Exactly. Projects that fail because the market wasn't there, especially after substantial investment, carry far more serious implications for a manager's career than, say, a technical challenge that was ultimately overcome through learning. Consequently, middle managers acting rationally in both their own and the company's perceived interest tend to back those projects for which market demand seems most assured. This rarely includes nascent, uncertain, disruptive innovations.
It's career risk management.
It is. It's also incredibly difficult to motivate competent, high-performing employees to energetically and persistently pursue a course of action that they, quite understandably, think makes no sense from the perspective of the company's established business model and its demanding financial targets. It's a thankless task that few are willing to undertake.
We even have a striking anecdote from the source material that powerfully illustrates this northeasterly pull and its impact on internal decision-making. It really brings it to life.
Yeah.
In August 1994, the CEO of one of the largest disk drive companies insisted that there was no market for 1.8-inch drives.
Tiny drives at the time.
Right. Despite his company having developed 4 generations of prototypes with increasing capacity, he pointed to a sample on his shelf and stated, "We want to be ready when the market is there, but there just isn't a market for them yet." He felt completely justified.
Perfectly reasonable statement on the surface.
Yet just a month later, a Harvard MBA student who had worked at Honda revealed that his team was already using a little 1.8-inch disk drive for dashboard mapping and navigation systems sourced from a small startup in Colorado.
Amazing.
The large established company's internal systems, its values, and its resource allocation processes effectively ignored a real, albeit small, market opportunity right under its nose. The CEO had designed the product, but the organization could not effectively sell it into a market it did not understand or value.
Yeah.
It's a powerful lesson in organizational blindness.
It truly is. This dynamic, this inherent northeasterly migration of incumbents, creates a very specific kind of vacuum in low-end value networks. This vacuum almost invariably draws an entrance, new companies, or small independent divisions of larger companies with appropriate technologies and, critically, cost structures tailored to those nascent markets. It's a predictable pattern, a law of the market.
Like nature abhorring a vacuum.
Precisely. A classic, perhaps even more illustrative example comes from the steel industry, which, despite its long history, demonstrates the same principles with devastating clarity.
Oh, the mini-mills. It's a perfect parallel, demonstrating how incumbent leaders can be undone by disruption, even in a seemingly slow-moving traditional industry.
Absolutely. Mini-mill steelmaking first became commercially viable in the mid-1960s. These were disruptive because they employed readily available and familiar technology, melting scrap steel in electric arc furnaces, a process dramatically different from the traditional integrated mills.
Using scrap instead of starting from more.
Correct. This new process had a significantly lower capital cost, about $400 million, to build a cost-competitive mini-mill compared to around $6 billion for an integrated mill, and required dramatically lower labor hours per ton of steel produced.
Cheaper to build, cheaper to run.
Significantly. However, because they used scrap steel, the product was initially of marginal quality, primarily suitable for steel reinforcing bars, or rebars, used in construction where precise quality wasn't the top concern.
Right, the really basic stuff.
Exactly. This was right at the bottom of the market in terms of quality, cost, and margins, and customers were notoriously disloyal, always switching for the lowest price. Integrated mills focused on high-quality, high-margin products like rolled sheet steel for automotive or appliance industries were almost relieved to be rid of the business. They saw it as unprofitable, low-end work.
You can have it.
Essentially, yes. But the mini-mills, unburdened by the legacy cost structure of integrated mills and able to be profitable with low gross margins, saw the rebar market entirely differently. It was a viable beachhead for them, a place to start and build.
A foothold.
A foothold. Once established in the rebar market, the most aggressive mini-mills, especially Nucor and Chaparral, began to relentlessly move upmarket. They worked tirelessly to improve the metallurgical quality and consistency of their products, invested in equipment to make larger shapes, and next attacked markets for larger bars, rods, and structural beams products that, for integrated mills, also brought the lowest margins.
So they climbed the ladder rung by rung.
Steadily. By the mid-1980s, these markets largely belonged to the mini-mills, who steadily improved their product to meet increasing demands, becoming formidable competitors.
And here's where the northeasterly migration of the incumbents becomes strikingly clear, almost like a tragic play unfolding. Throughout the 1980s, as they were gradually ceding the bar and beam business to the mini-mills, the integrated steelmakers actually experienced dramatically improving profits.
How? It seems counterintuitive, doesn't it?
It does, but they ferociously attacked costs in their remaining operations and increasingly focused their efforts on high-quality rolled sheet steel, where quality-sensitive manufacturers of cars, cans, and appliances paid premium prices for metallurgically consistent steel with defect-free surfaces.
The really profitable stuff.
Right. They invested billions there, and the business press generously acknowledged these aggressive, well-placed investments as remarkable recoveries and triumphs of good management. This was their upmarket retreat, their profitable northeasterly migration into what they saw as safe haven, a fortress of high-margin business. But then a new disruptive cloud appeared on the horizon, just as they thought they were safe.
That new cloud was continuous thin slab casting technology, announced in 1987. This innovation allowed steel to be cast into long, thin slabs that could go directly into a rolling mill, bypassing several costly, energy-intensive steps required in traditional integrated mills.
More efficient process.
Highly efficient. Most importantly, a cost-competitive, continuous thin slab casting and rolling mill could be built for less than $250 million, about one-tenth the capital cost of a traditional integrated sheet mill. At this scale, an electric arc furnace could easily supply the required molten steel. Furthermore, thin slab casting promised at least a 20% reduction in the total cost of making sheet steel. This was a hugely significant advancement, potentially revolutionary.
Yet, almost predictably, when integrated mills like USX and Bethlehem evaluated thin slab casting, they rejected it. It feels like a broken record, doesn't it? Why?
Precisely. The reason was entirely rational from their perspective. At the outset, the technology could not offer the perfectly smooth, defect-free surface finish required by their mainstream, high-paying customers, the makers of cans, cars, and appliances.
Didn't meet the quality spec for their best customers?
Exactly. The only markets it could initially address were those like construction decking or corrugated steel, where users were more sensitive to price than to minor surface blemishes. Thin slab casting was, by definition, a disruptive technology, starting at the lower end. For the integrated mills, it made no logical sense to target significant capital investment at a technology positioned in the least profitable, most price-competitive, and commodity-like end of their business, especially when their profitable mainstream customers didn't need or want it.
Why invest in the crummy end of the market?
From their view, yes. Instead, they doubled down. investing even more billions in conventional fixed slab casters to protect their existing high-margin business, continuing their northeasterly migration.
And then Nucor stepped in, just as the disruptive playbook predicts.
Quite so. Not surprisingly, Nucor, the minimill leader, saw the situation entirely differently. Unencumbered by the demands of profitable customers in the sheet steel business and benefiting from a cost structure forged at the very bottom of the industry, Nucor fired up the world's first continuous thin slab casting facility in 1989.
They jumped on it.
They did. While its initial success was indeed in the commoditized, least profitable end of the market, Nucor relentlessly improved the surface quality of its sheet steel. They continued their upmarket march, capturing significant market share from the integrated mills and higher quality segments over time, completing the cycle of disruption. The steel industry provides a potent, real-world illustration of how this northeasterly pull and the inherent bias of good management practices create profound vulnerabilities to disruptive innovation. It's a testament to the idea that what is rational for the present can be fatal for the future.
A really powerful example.
This then brings us to a fundamental framework for understanding organizational capabilities and, critically, their inherent disabilities. The RPV framework. It posits that a company's ability to innovate and respond to change isn't solely about the talent and intelligence of its individual employees. The organization itself has capabilities and limitations that exist independently of the people within it, almost like an institutional personality.
RPV. Resources, processes, values.
Exactly. We can appraise these by looking at three classes of factors: its resources, its processes, and its values.
Let's start with resources. These are the most visible of the factors and often what managers instinctively focus on. Resources include things like people, equipment, technology, product designs, brands, information, and cash, as well as relationships with suppliers, distributors, and customers.
The tangible and intangible assets.
Right. They are essentially assets that can be hired and fired, bought and sold, depreciated, or enhanced. Access to abundant and high-quality resources certainly enhances an organization's chances of coping with change. However, as our research shows, simply having great resources isn't enough. You could give identical sets of resources to two different organizations, and what they accomplish would likely be significantly different. Resources are necessary, but not sufficient.
This is because the true capabilities to transform those inputs into valuable outputs reside profoundly in the organization's processes. Processes are the methods by which tasks are consistently performed, everything from manufacturing and customer service protocols to market research methodologies, product development stages, and budgeting procedures.
How things actually get done.
Precisely. By their very nature, processes are established to ensure consistency, to make sure employees perform recurrent tasks in the same way, time after time. They are designed not to change, or to change only through tightly controlled, often bureaucratic procedures. This means that the very mechanisms through which organizations consistently create value are intrinsically inimical to change when that change demands new ways of working.
They're built for stability, not flexibility.
Exactly. The critical, often invisible processes that support investment decision-making, how market research is done, how financial projections are made, how budgets are negotiated, are often where the most serious disabilities in coping with disruptive change reside. They are the fixed rails the company runs on.
And finally, we have values. These are perhaps the most insidious because they're often unstated but incredibly powerful. Values are the criteria by which employees and managers throughout the organization make prioritization decisions.
What really matters here?
Right. They reflect the company's cost structure and its business model, effectively defining the rules employees must follow for the company to make money and be considered successful. For instance, if a company's overhead costs require it to achieve gross profit margins of 40% to satisfy shareholders, a powerful value will evolve that encourages middle managers to kill ideas promising margins below that threshold, regardless of their long-term disruptive potential.
Not profitable enough for us.
Exactly. These values become clear, consistent, and broadly understood decision rules that permeate the organization, guiding what gets funded, what gets ignored, and what simply isn't interesting enough to pursue. They are the filters through which all opportunities are viewed.
Here's the kicker, and it's a profoundly important insight for any manager. The very processes and values that constitute an organization's capabilities in one context often define its disabilities in another. This is the heart of the RPV framework.
Your strengths become your weaknesses.
Precisely. For example, the values that cause employees to prioritize projects yielding high-margin products simply cannot simultaneously accord priority to low-margin products without significant internal conflict. Processes honed for efficient, high-volume, high-margin product development cannot simultaneously be effective for nurturing small, low-margin disruptive products that require agility and iterative learning.
They're optimized for the wrong thing.
Completely. These organizational values, particularly those related to acceptable gross margins and the required size of a business opportunity, change predictably as companies grow and move upmarket. A small opportunity that would excite a $40 million company requiring $8 million in new revenue for growth will be dismissed as not interesting by a $4 billion company needing $800 million in new revenue for similar growth percentages.
The goalposts keep moving.
Exactly. The opportunity hasn't changed, but the lens through which it's viewed has.
This explains why focused organizations tend to perform so much better than unfocused ones. Their processes and values are precisely matched to a specific set of tasks and market conditions. And this has critical implications for corporate strategy, particularly when it comes to growth via acquisition.
This is key for M&A.
Right. If the true value you're acquiring in another company is primarily in its unique processes and values, its distinctive ways of working, its culture of innovation, its decision-making criteria, then it's absolutely crucial not to integrate it into the parent organization. You must let it stand alone, allow it to maintain its distinct way of working, and perhaps infuse your resources into its existing framework.
Keep it separate.
If you integrate it, you risk vaporizing the very source of its value. Think about the Daimler-Chrysler merger. The integration of Chrysler's distinctive product design and supplier integration processes into Daimler's might have inadvertently destroyed much of Chrysler's unique value, losing what made it special.
Precisely. IBM's acquisition of Rome also demonstrates this. By fully integrating Rome, whose value lay in its PBX development processes and agile market discovery, IBM essentially forced Rome's products and customers through processes honed for large computer systems, causing the business to stumble badly.
Killed the golden goose by accident.
In effect, conversely, if the value of an acquisition lies primarily in its resources, its people, specific product lines, technology patents, or customer lists, then integrating the firm into the parent company can make a lot of sense, leveraging the parent's existing capabilities and distribution. It's a crucial distinction that too many mergers miss.
Integrate resources, protect processes and values.
That's a good way to put it. Furthermore, simply trying to create new capabilities internally by hiring new, talented resources won't work if those resources are plugged back into fundamentally unchanged processes. New challenges, especially disruptive ones, often require entirely new ways of interacting and coordinating.
You can't just plug new people into the old system.
Rarely works. This is why concepts like heavyweight teams, dedicated, collocated, cross-functional teams with general manager-like authority are sometimes necessary. They are tools to create new processes, new ways of working together that ultimately coalesce as new organizational capabilities. The core lesson is that processes are much harder to change than resources, and values even more so because their raison d'etre is consistency. Given these inherent challenges and the tendency of good management to inadvertently lead to failure when confronted with disruption, what specific strategies can companies employ to succeed? The first critical strategy involves fundamentally rethinking how we approach new markets.
Okay, how do we deal with this then?
Well, markets for disruptive technologies do not exist in a way that can be analyzed or fully predicted through traditional market research. Rather, they must be discovered through an interactive, iterative process between suppliers and customers. At the time of a disruptive technology's initial development, its ultimate market applications are not just unknown. They are, in fact, unknowable.
Unknowable. That's a strong word. So market research is useless here.
For predicting the initial market for disruption, largely yes. This is a massive point, and it flies in the face of what many of us as business managers are taught and practice daily, especially our reliance on detailed market forecasts. Our sources provide stark evidence. Experts in the disk drive industry, who are often stunningly accurate when forecasting the trajectory of sustaining technologies.
They knew the existing market well.
Extremely well, but they were consistently and spectacularly wrong when it came to spotting the advent and predicting the size of new markets for disruptive innovations. There's a real danger in proceeding as if you know these markets from the outset.
Like the HP Kitty Hawk example.
Exactly. Consider Hewlett-Packard's 1.3-inch Kitty Hawk disk drive. HP aggressively invested substantial sums in market research and manufacturing capacity, basing their entire strategy on projected PDA market forecasts. When that forecasted market didn't materialize as expected, they had no resources left to pivot or adapt, and the project was largely viewed as a flop. They bet big on an assumption that turned out to be false.
Ouch. A costly mistake based on a bad forecast.
This reveals a critical takeaway for every manager. You must, counterintuitively, assume your initial forecasts for disruptive markets are wrong. The appropriate approach is what our research terms discovery-driven planning.
Discovery-driven planning. Okay, what's that?
Instead of developing a plan for execution based on fixed assumptions and detailed market projections, you develop a plan for learning. This means systematically identifying the key assumptions your business plan is based on, then explicitly planning for learning what needs to be known and in what sequence.
So plan to learn, not just plan to do.
Precisely. You aim to resolve critical uncertainties before making expensive, irreversible commitments. For example, instead of building a massive, highly automated production line based on aggressive volume forecasts, you might build small, modular production capacity, allowing you to scale up or down as market signals confirm or disprove your assumptions, or even pivot entirely. It's about hedging your bets while maximizing learning.
Makes sense. Less risk, more flexibility. And paired with that is a mindset called agnostic marketing. This approach explicitly assumes that no one, not you, not your internal teams, and crucially not your customers, can definitively know whether, how, or in what quantities a disruptive product will be used before there is real-world experience with it.
You admit you don't know.
Right. So you get out of the labs and out of the traditional focus groups. You create knowledge about new customers and new applications through what are essentially market expeditions. Testing, probing, and trial and error with real products in the hands of real people who are paying real money for them.
Learn by doing, by selling.
Exactly. A classic example of this is Honda's Super Cub motorcycle. Honda initially intended to sell powerful, large highway bikes in the U.S. based on their understanding of the existing market. But quite accidentally, the Japanese executives dispatched to the U.S. began using their small Super Cub delivery bikes for fun off-road in the hills east of Los Angeles.
Just messing around, essentially.
Pretty much. People noticed, and they inadvertently discovered a brand new recreational dirt bike market. This unanticipated success ultimately led to a complete pivot in their North American strategy, transforming their market entry and redefining their product's purpose. They didn't plan it, they discovered it.
A fantastic story. The profound lesson here is that successful ventures into disruptive markets don't necessarily guess the right strategy at the outset. In fact, most successful new ventures abandon their original business strategies when they begin implementing them and learn what actually works.
So being wrong initially is okay, even expected.
It's almost the norm. The dominant difference between successful ventures and failed ones, generally, is not the astuteness of their original strategy. Guessing the right strategy up front isn't nearly as important to success as conserving enough resources, financial, human, and organizational credibility so that new business initiatives get a second or third stab at getting it right.
You need runway to iterate.
Precisely. Those that run out of resources or credibility before they can iterate toward a viable strategy are the ones that ultimately fail. It's about resilience and learning, not initial perfection.
Okay, so plan to learn, be agnostic, conserve resources. What else?
The second crucial strategy for managing disruptive technological change addresses the issue of scale, the imperative of small organizations for disruptive innovation. The fundamental problem is that small emerging markets simply cannot solve the near-term growth needs of large established companies.
Right, the mismatch in scale we talked about.
Exactly. Consider a $4 billion company that needs to generate $800 million in new revenue just to achieve a modest 20% growth rate in the subsequent year. No truly new emerging market, by its very definition, is going to be that large initially. The numbers just don't add up for a large incumbent.
A billion-dollar company isn't going to get excited about a potential $10 million market.
Not in the short term, no. And the consequence of this is that disruptive projects, because they are perceived as financially insignificant in a large corporate context, consistently struggle for resources, for top talent, and for sustained executive attention. They are perpetually overshadowed and under-resourced, losing out in internal battles against the demands of the mainstream business, which brings in the vast majority of current revenues and profits.
They just don't move the needle enough.
Exactly. So the proven solution, which may seem radical, is to place responsibility for developing and commercializing disruptive technologies in organizations small enough that the new venture's revenues and profits are meaningfully significant to its own success and growth targets. It needs to matter to them.
Put the small opportunity in a small pond where it looks big.
That's a good way of thinking about it. There are a couple of highly effective ways to achieve this organizational separation. One is to spin out an independent company. A prime example is Quantum's Plus Development. Quantum Corporation, a leading maker of 8-inch disk drives, financed and retained 80% ownership of a spin-off venture specifically dedicated to commercializing a thin 3.5-inch drive.
Mostly owned but separate.
Right. This entity operated in different facilities, was completely self-sufficient with its own executive staff, and was measured by its own P&L. Similarly, Control Data Corporation, CDC, after missing the 8-inch drive generation, deliberately located its 5.25-inch effort in Oklahoma City, explicitly to isolate the group from the company's mainstream 14-inch customers and the powerful Minneapolis engineering culture.
Physical separation, too.
Yes. Hewlett-Packard also created a completely autonomous inkjet division in Vancouver, Washington, giving it responsibility for the disruptive inkjet printer and allowing it to effectively compete with its own highly successful LaserJet division. This internal competition, driven by organizational separation, proved incredibly effective.
The benefits of this spin-out approach are truly powerful. It harnesses resource dependence for the new venture, meaning the small revenues and profits of the disruptive business are incredibly meaningful to the spin-out's survival, generating intense energy and enthusiasm among its employees.
It matters deeply to them.
Right. It forces a cash-positive focus and, critically, prevents the values and processes of the mainstream high-margin business from suffocating the nascent low-margin disruptive idea. However, and this is a crucial caveat, it's vital that this spin-out has strong CEO oversight and championship to ensure it receives adequate resources and is truly free to create its own appropriate processes and values, rather than being inadvertently stifled by the parent.
Needs top-level protection.
Without that executive commitment, it's just another struggling internal project.
Another effective approach is to acquire a small company that is already successfully pursuing the disruptive technology and then allow it to operate with a high degree of independence. This is precisely how Allen Bradley negotiated its very successful disruptive transition from electromechanical to electronic motor controls.
Buy the capability instead of building it, but keep it separate.
Exactly. Despite having less institutional experience in microelectronics than competitors like GE or Westinghouse, Allen Bradley strategically acquired small programmable controller startups and maintained them as a business separate from its mainstream electromechanical operations. Over time, the electronics products from the acquired units significantly ate into the traditional business, but Allen Bradley successfully transitioned, largely due to this organizational separation.
So it can be done.
It can. Now, it's possible for a manager to try and manage this change from within the mainstream company, but it's incredibly difficult. Micropolis CEO Stuart Maybon, for instance, battled internal forces for 18 months to shift his company entirely to 5.25-inch drives, abandoning all old customers. He won, but he remembers it as the most exhausting experience of his life, a rare and costly victory, powerfully highlighting the immense difficulty of fighting the forces of resource dependence and organizational inertia head-on.
It takes heroic effort, usually.
It really does. It's a testament to how the system fights back.
Okay, so assuming you have the right organizational context in place, whether through a spin-out or an independent acquisition, the next big question for managers is how to approach the actual design of the product and how to get it to market effectively.
Right. Strategy number 3. When it comes to product development for disruptive innovations, the focus needs to be squarely on simplicity, reliability, and convenience, rather than attempting to deliver superior functionality, especially in the early stages.
Less is more, initially.
Often, yes. These are often the attributes most valued in the new emerging value networks. Look at Intuit's QuickBooks, for example. It captured 70% of the small business accounting software market, not by offering more features than its competitors, but by being dramatically simpler and more convenient to use, directly addressing the needs of small business owners who weren't accountants, whose previous options had overshot their needs with too much complexity. Simplicity sold.
Made it accessible.
Precisely. Furthermore, you need to design a highly flexible product platform, one that allows for quick, low-cost feature, function, and styling changes. This is critical because you must assume that your initial market concept or product design will likely prove wrong. You need to budget for rapid iteration and learning, building in adaptability from the start.
Designed for change.
Yes. And critically, disruptive products typically need to hit a low price point. They often have a lower sticker price per unit than the established products in the mainstream, even if their initial cost in use might be higher. For example, the smaller disk drives were crucial for desktop PCs, not just because of their size, but because their low unit price fit within the overall cost points personal computer makers needed to hit, even though their cost per megabyte was higher than larger drives.
Affordable entry point.
Exactly. Similarly, early hydraulic excavators had a lower sticker price than cable-actuated ones, but a higher cost per cubic yard moved per hour. The sticker price, the upfront cost, often attracts the initial disruptive market.
Then there's the crucial technology strategy for disruptive innovations. A core principle here is that your plan should call for no technological breakthroughs on the critical path of the project. This is a counterintuitive point, because we often associate innovation with breakthroughs.
Right, we think disruptive means radical new tech.
But you're saying that's usually not the case.
Historically, disruptive technologies rarely involve radical new scientific discoveries. Rather, they consist of proven, often off-the-shelf components, arranged in a novel product architecture that collectively offers the customer a set of attributes never before available.
So it's more about the new combination or application.
Often, yes. This insight profoundly challenges much conventional wisdom. For example, major automakers like Ford and Chrysler often explicitly state their belief that a battery breakthrough is absolutely essential before electric vehicles, EVs, can be commercially viable for the mass market.
Waiting for the miracle battery.
And from a disruptive innovation perspective, that belief is precisely why they struggle to transition. They are trying to force an inherently disruptive technology, the electric vehicle, into a sustaining role, expecting it to immediately meet or exceed the performance metrics of their mainstream gasoline cars for their existing customers.
Trying to make it fit the old mold.
Exactly. This immediately demands a technological breakthrough that is not yet ready, creating an impossible hurdle. The reality is that the significant advances in battery technology required to power cars for long distances will likely come from those who successfully pioneer low-end EV markets first, using existing, proven technology, and then gradually develop sustaining improvements as they move upmarket, driving the breakthroughs themselves from a position of market experience.
So the breakthrough follows the market, not the other way around.
That's often how it works with disruption. They are waiting for the breakthrough instead of creating the conditions for it.
Finally, we need to consider distribution strategy. It has almost always been the case that disruptive products fundamentally redefine the dominant distribution channels.
Yes, channels are often overlooked but crucial.
Why is that?
This is because dealers and distributors' economics, their models for how to make money, are powerfully shaped by the mainstream value network, just as the manufacturers are. Existing dealers have profit formulas tied to mainstream products, often based on high unit margins and extensive service. Disruptive products, typically having lower unit margins and simpler design, often don't fit these established models.
Doesn't fit their business model either.
Right. A great example is Honda's disruptive small motorbikes. They were initially rejected by mainstream motorcycle dealers, who made their profits on larger, high-margin bikes. This forced Honda to cultivate entirely new channels, selling through sporting goods retailers, opening up a completely new market.
Had to find new partners.
They did. Conversely, Harley-Davidson failed to establish a strong presence in the small bike market, partly due to active resistance from its own dealer network, who felt these small machines compromised the brand image and, critically, didn't fit their profit model.
Their own dealers blocked them.
In effect, yes. Therefore, a critical takeaway for any manager contemplating disruptive innovations is to be prepared to find or create entirely new distribution channels. You simply cannot expect your mainstream partners, whose economics are inherently tied to your existing business model, to enthusiastically embrace new products that disrupt their own profit formulas. Their resistance will be rational, but it will be a barrier.
Don't count on your old friends for the new game.
That's a succinct way to put it. Let's bring all these principles together now by applying them to a contemporary, highly relevant challenge, the electric vehicle. Understanding the EV through the lens of disruptive innovation reveals a clear strategic pathway.
Okay, let's test the theory with EVs. Is it disruptive?
Absolutely. Mainstream automakers initially expressed doubt that a substantial market exists for them, which is a classic symptom of a disruptive innovation.
Check one.
Current EVs, in their early forms, cannot meet the mainstream performance needs of gasoline cars in terms of range, acceleration, or direct cost for a typical family vehicle.
Underperform on old metrics. Check two.
However, they offer a new, orthogonal package of attributes: quiet operation, zero emissions, and a potentially simpler ownership experience with fewer moving parts.
New attributes, check 3.
And crucially, EV technology, particularly battery performance, is improving faster than the market demand for performance in mainstream applications. Eventually, it will become good enough for an increasing segment of the market. Experts who compare current EV performance directly to gasoline cars are, in effect, asking the wrong question, just as mainframe experts ask the wrong question about smaller disk drives. They're missing the disruptive potential.
Got it. So if it's disruptive, where's the initial market for electric vehicles? This is the million-dollar question for any automaker trying to navigate this transition.
And the answer isn't obvious. We need to acknowledge and indeed emphasize that it's not in the mainstream auto segments today, despite what many incumbents might try to force. Instead, the strategy should be to identify a segment of customers who might actually value the current weaknesses of EVs as strengths.
Value the weaknesses.
Yeah.
Like,
For example, one of our students, in a brainstorm, suggested that parents of high school students seeking simple, safe transportation for their teenagers might see the product's simplicity, slow acceleration, and limited driving range of early EVs as highly desirable attributes for their children's cars. It's about security and control, not speed or range.
okay, that's clever. Turn the bug into a feature.
Potentially. No amount of traditional market research will tell you this answer. It will take expeditions into the market actively testing, probing, and experimenting with real products and real customers to truly discover the niche. And crucially, you must plan for learning and iteration, not for fixed execution based on potentially flawed initial assumptions or external mandates. This is about discovery, not prediction.
Find the people who love the limitations.
Find the right initial application. From the perspective of product, technology, and distribution strategy for electric vehicles, this means designing for simplicity, reliability, and convenience. Focus on fundamental attributes like ease of charging, using commonly available electrical service, creating a flexible product platform that allows for quick, low-cost modifications as market understanding evolves, and aiming for a low sticker price.
Keep it simple, flexible, cheap.
As for technology, a critical aspect of disruptive innovation is to avoid requiring a battery breakthrough for initial success. Use proven technology, however modest. The significant advances in battery technology will likely follow from those who successfully create and nurture a low-end EV market and then gradually move upmarket, driving the sustaining improvements themselves. They are the ones who will fund and develop the breakthroughs through market experience.
Use today's tech, don't wait for tomorrow's miracle.
Exactly. And when it comes to distribution, be prepared to seek or create entirely new distribution channels. Mainstream dealers of gasoline-powered automobiles, whose profit formulas are tied to higher margins and different service models, are unlikely to view these early disruptive electric vehicles as critical to their success. They might even actively resist them.
Find new ways to sell them.
You'll need partners whose economics align with the new value proposition, or you'll need to build your own. Finally, from an organizational standpoint, the most effective approach is to establish an independent organization with a heavyweight development team specifically dedicated to the EV.
The spin-out or separate unit strategy again.
Yes. This structure allows for focused effort, attracts motivated talent who see the venture as central to their success, and makes even small wins meaningful, significant. It insulates the disruptive project from the gravitational pull of mainstream values, such as the need for high margins and large markets and existing processes that are optimized for the legacy business.
Protect it from the mothership.
Precisely. This strategy, however, requires strong CEO championship and oversight to ensure the new organization receives adequate resources and is truly free to create its own appropriate processes and values rather than being inadvertently stifled by the parent. It is a commitment that goes right to the top.
This means one of your future EV models might, like HP's inkjet division, eventually challenge its laserjet business, end up directly competing with and potentially killing one of your own gasoline car divisions. But paradoxically, it's the only way to ensure the company's long-term survival in the face of such a powerful disruptive force.
It's about self-disruption to avoid external disruption, a controlled demolition, if you will, to save the whole structure. #outro.
Wow. That was truly a fascinating and, frankly, quite challenging exploration. So what does all this mean for you, our savvy business manager or MBA student listening in? It's clear that the path to sustained success isn't always linear, and sometimes the very best intentions and widely accepted management practices can inadvertently lead you astray, straight into the innovator's dilemma.
Precisely. The innovator's dilemma is a profound reminder that what constitutes good management is deeply context dependent. Successfully navigating disruptive change requires not just technological prowess or keen market insight, but an acute awareness of your organizational capabilities and inherent disabilities.
Knowing your RPVs.
Knowing your RPVs, yes, and a willingness to challenge deeply ingrained values and the courage to pursue markets that may initially seem insignificant, unprofitable, or even irrational from your current vantage point. It demands a different kind of bravery.
It's about having the humility to realize that your initial market assumptions for a disruptive technology are highly likely to be wrong, and then building in the flexibility and resource conservation necessary to learn and iterate rapidly to pivot when the market speaks. Adaptability.
It's about empowering small, agile teams, shielding them from the gravitational pull of your core business to nurture those tiny, low-margin ideas that, with consistent improvement and a dedicated focus, could very well become the giants of tomorrow. Indeed, it compels us to consider a critical internal question for any organization. Are your company's deeply embedded processes and values, honed for past successes, inadvertently creating blind spots to the next wave of disruption?
Are your strengths blinding you?
Essentially, yes. And how might you intentionally create the conditions within your organization for genuine market-creating innovation, rather than simply reacting to the immediate demands of your existing most profitable customers? It's about proactive creation, not just reactive optimization.
A truly provocative thought, and one worth sitting with. Thank you for joining us on this exploration of the innovator's dilemma here on the Pocket MBA. We hope this session has equipped you with valuable insights to apply in your own organizations as you confront the challenges and opportunities of innovation. Until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep innovating.
Goodbye for now.